2.5 millennia ago, in the heart of Athens, a man walked barefoot through the crowded agora. While the city was a hub of art, politics, and military might, he offered no goods for sale, held no political office, and commanded no army. Instead, he sought something far more valuable and elusive: the truth. His name was Socrates. Welcome to our exploration of one of the history's most fascinating minds. A man whose thoughts and way of life challenged not only the citizens of ancient Athens, but continue to provoke deep reflection today. Born around 417 BCE, Socrates walked the streets of Athens, engaging with anyone willing to debate and question their beliefs. He became both a beloved figure and a thorn in the side of the establishment. But who was he really? And why does his legacy endure thousands of years later? Socrates is often described as the father of Western philosophy, yet he left no writings of his own. Everything we know comes from his followers and critics. Unlike the philosophers who thought for profit, Socrates offered his insights freely, using conversation to unravel the mysteries of life and of virtue. Athens, during Socrates' time, was at the height of its golden age. It was a city of democracy, art, and power. But it was also a city that could be as fickle as it was great. A place where new ideas thrived but could also lead to a man's downfall. Why, after so many centuries, does Socrates still matter? Why does his name resonate not just with scholars, but with anyone who values critical thinking and the courage to challenge accepted norms? In this exploration, we will uncover what made Socrates such a unique and enduring figure. Relentless seeker of wisdom who dared to question everything. He was born into a modest Athenian household. His father, Sophronicus, was a stonemason, and his mother, Phaenarete, was a midwife. Growing up, Socrates likely helped his father in his craft, learning the discipline of labor and the patience required to carve stone. But it was his mother's work that would leave a deeper philosophical imprint. Socrates often likened his role as a philosopher to that of a midwife, helping others give birth to their own ideas and self-understanding. Unlike a traditional teacher, he claimed not to impart knowledge, but to draw it out from within those he questioned, a practice that would come to define his philosophical method. As a young man, Socrates was curious and observant. He spent hours in public spaces, listening, absorbing, and questioning everything around him. Athens, with its political debates, theatrical performances, and philosophical discussions, became his classroom. While others pursued wealth and status, Socrates seemed indifferent, focusing instead on understanding the human condition. Though much of his early intellectual influences remain speculative, Socrates was exposed to the works of pre-Socratic philosophers such as Anaxagoras and Parmenides. He grappled with questions about the nature of reality, ethics, and the cosmos. Yet, unlike these thinkers, he shifted his focus inward, toward the soul and the moral character of the individual. A pivotal moment in Socrates' life came when his friend Chaerephon visited the oracle of Delphi and asked if anyone was wiser than Socrates. The oracle replied that there was none. Troubled by this, Socrates set out to understand its meaning. How could he, who claimed to know nothing, be the wisest of them all? Determined to test the oracle's words, Socrates began questioning those reputed to be wise: politicians, poets, and craftsmen. He soon realized that many who believed themselves knowledgeable were, in fact, ignorant of their own ignorance. This realization became the cornerstone of his philosophy. True wisdom lies in recognizing one's limitations. Unlike many of his peers, Socrates rejected wealth and luxury. He wore the same simple clothes, often walked barefoot, and lived frugally. He believed that a virtuous life, rooted in self-examination and ethical inquiry, was far more valuable than material possessions. These early experiences shaped the development of what we now call the Socratic Method, a form of cooperative dialogue that challenges assumptions and reveals deeper truths. Socrates would pose questions, listen and guide his interlocutors to confront their contradictions, ultimately leading them to greater self-awareness. Socrates' character traits. Socrates was not a typical philosopher of his time. While many sought acclaim and patronage, Socrates roamed the streets of Athens, engaging with anyone willing to converse. His character, a blend of humility, humor, resilience, and relentless curiosity, made him both captivating and controversial. Socrates is often remembered for his claim, "I know that I know nothing." This wasn't false modesty. It was a recognition of the vastness of human ignorance. Unlike those who feigned knowledge, Socrates acknowledged his limitations. This humility made him wise in the eyes of some, of infuriatingly elusive to others. By admitting what he did not know, Socrates opened the door to genuine inquiry, making his interlocutors confront their own ignorance. During one of his dialogues, Socrates engaged a prominent politician who boasted of his understanding of justice. Through persistent questioning, Socrates revealed contradictions in the man's arguments, demonstrating that the politician's confidence was built on shaky ground. For Socrates, this was not an act of humiliation, but a path to deeper self-awareness. So, curiosity was at the core of Socrates' being. He questioned everything: social norms, moral values, and even the gods. To Socrates, no question was too trivial or too sacred. He believed that the examined life was the only life worth living. This relentless drive often made him a thorn in the side of Athenians who preferred comfort over critical thought. Socrates would often approach craftsmen and ask seemingly simple questions about their trade. Why do they do what they do? What is the purpose of their work? These conversations frequently led to broader questions about the value of life, virtue, and purpose. Very few could match Socrates' moral courage. In a society that prized conformity, he was willing to stand alone for what he believed was right. This was evident not just in his philosophical debates, but also during his trial. When faced with the threat of death, Socrates refuses to compromise his principles. He believed that living unjustly or betraying one's values was worse than death. For example, during his trial, Socrates was given the option to stop philosophizing and go free, but instead, he boldly stated that he would continue questioning and challenging people as long as he lived. His refusal to bow to pressure, even in the face of death, was a testament to his integrity and unshakable commitment to his values. Socrates was a master of irony, a skill he used to great effect. His dialogues were often laced with humor and subtle mockery, challenging his interlocutors to think more deeply about their beliefs. By pretending ignorance, Socrates could disarm his opponents, leading them into contradictions and moments of self-realization. For example, Socrates was engaging a sophist, pretending to seek enlightenment from the man's teachings. And in one exchange, Socrates feigned admiration for a sophist's rhetorical prowess, asking naive-sounding questions that gradually exposed the sophist's shallow reasoning. The use of irony not only highlighted the flaws in his opponent's arguments, but also captivated onlookers, making philosophy both challenging and entertaining. For Socrates, philosophy was not a profession, but a way of life. His pursuit of truth and virtue was unwavering. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he sought power, wealth, or recognition. Socrates dedicated himself to moral and ethical inquiry. He believed that true knowledge must lead to virtuous action, and he challenged others to live by the same standard. Example: Socrates often guided young Athenians, urging them to prioritize the health of their soul over the pursuit of wealth and prestige. To him, living virtuously meant living according to reason and understanding rather than blindly following societal norms. Socrates' refusal to conform made him a unique and often polarizing figure. He rejected the pursuit of wealth, fame, and political power, values cherished by many Athenians. This independence made him deeply respected by some and despised by others. Socrates believed that true freedom came from the mind, not from external circumstances. While Athens celebrated grand festivals and political victories, Socrates could often be found in quiet contemplation or in the middle of a philosophical debate. He believed that happiness and fulfillment were internal pursuits, independent of societal expectations or material wealth. So, Socrates was very humble, yet proud of his quest for wisdom, curious beyond measure, courageous in the face of adversity, and fiercely devoted to truth and virtue. His irony and wit challenged the powerful, and his independence set him apart from the crowd. These traits made him not just a philosopher, but a living example of the principles he espoused. An enigma that Athens both admired and feared. The allegory of the cave. Socrates had a very important and very strange story. Imagine that we fade into the dark cave with dim light illuminating stone walls. Chains click softly as figures are shown sitting, bound and facing a wall. In one of the most famous passages of the Republic, Plato describes an allegory that encapsulates the human condition and our pursuit of knowledge. A metaphor that, according to Plato, was inspired by the teachings of Socrates. This is the allegory of the cave. Imagine a group of prisoners who have been chained inside a cave since birth. Their necks and legs are bound, forcing them to gaze only at the cave wall in front of them. Behind them burns a fire, and between the fire and the prisoners there is a walkway where people pass, carrying objects of various shapes. These objects cast shadows on the wall, and to the prisoners, these shadows are the only reality they know and they have ever known. To the prisoners, the shadows are not mere illusions, but the sum total of their reality. They give names to the shapes, discuss their movements, and believe that the echoes they hear reflect true sounds. This shadow play, however distorted, becomes their truth, a fabricated world of appearances and half-truths. Now imagine that one prisoner is freed. At first he resists, reluctant to turn away from the familiar shadows. As he turns, the fire burns his eyes, and he is blinded by the unfamiliar light. Slowly, painfully, he begins to comprehend that the shadows were mere illusions and that there is more to reality. Eventually, the prisoner ascends from the cave and steps into the world outside. His eyes adjust, and he sees real objects for the first time: trees, animals, and the sky. Over time, he realizes that this new world is far more real and vivid than the shadows he once believed to be the ultimate truth. He has discovered a higher plane of reality, a new dimension of understanding. But the story does not end here. With newfound insight, the prisoner returns to the cave to free his fellow captives. However, they scoff at him. His words, shaped by a higher understanding, sound strange, even laughable. His eyes, adjusted to the sunlight, cannot see as well in the darkness, and the prisoners mock his blindness. To them, he appears foolish, proof that venturing beyond the shadows is dangerous and meaningless. The allegory of the cave is a metaphor for human perception, ignorance, and the transformative power of philosophy. To Socrates and Plato, most people live as prisoners, mistaking shadows of reality for the truth. The journey out of the cave symbolizes the philosopher's path, from ignorance to knowledge, from illusion to enlightenment. It is a journey that requires courage, questioning, and the willingness to challenge deeply held beliefs. In this allegory, Socrates represents the freed prisoner, the philosopher who seeks to enlighten others, even at a great personal risk. He believed that it was the philosopher's duty to lead others out of ignorance, despite resistance, fear, and hostility. The journey out of the cave is difficult, but the pursuit of the truth is the highest calling. Today, the allegory of the cave remains a powerful reminder of how we can be trapped by our perceptions, by cultural norms, and by the limits of our understanding. It challenges us to seek truth, to question appearances, and to strive for wisdom, even when it means confronting painful realities. In Socrates' words, the unexamined life is not worth living. Socrates' break from social norms and his philosophy of freedom. Imagine Athens during the Golden Age. Imagine scenes of bustling markets, political debates in the assembly, religious processions, and lavish banquets. People are seen adhering to rigid hierarchies, seeking approval, and conforming to traditional roles. This is Socrates' time, and in his times, Athens was a city where conformity was both a social expectation and a means of survival. To deviate from the norms was to risk alienation, ridicule, or even worse. Citizens were expected to compete for prestige through wealth, military achievements, and adherence to religious rituals. Success was measured by how closely one followed the prescribed path of honor and reputation. Yet Socrates chose to forge his own way, a path that would ultimately challenge the very fabric of Athenian society. While Athenians sought wealth and prestige as markers of success, Socrates believed such pursuits were fleeting and devoid of genuine worth. To him, material wealth was a distraction from the soul's true purpose, which is pursuing wisdom and virtue. He often mocked the vanity of those who measured their worth by external possessions, pointing out that wealth could not make a person virtuous or wise. Socrates believed that true freedom came from mastering oneself, not from accumulating external power or wealth. This mastery required an understanding of one's own desires, fears, and motivations, a process that could only be achieved through self-examination and critical inquiry. To be enslaved by desires, he argued, was to be unfree. By choosing a life of simplicity, Socrates freed himself from the tyranny of materialism, allowing him to focus on what he believed was the highest calling: living a virtuous life. Socrates' refusal to accept payment for his teachings reflected his conviction that wisdom should be freely shared, not commodified. While the sophists used rhetoric to gain influence and wealth, Socrates saw philosophy as a sacred mission, a public service to guide citizens toward moral improvement. His independence from financial incentives meant he could challenge anyone, without fear of losing favor of patronage. Athenian society placed immense value on public opinion and reputation. Citizens often tailored their behavior to gain favor, avoid scandal, or climb the social ladder. Socrates, however, was indifferent to the approval of others. He did not seek fame or validation. His loyalty was solely to the pursuit of truth. This detachment from social approval granted him a rare kind of freedom, the freedom to speak honestly, question fearlessly, and live authentically. Socrates often confronted Athens' most powerful figures, exposing their ignorance and moral failings. Unlike those who sought to flatter or manipulate, Socrates asked questions that forced people to confront uncomfortable truths. His fearlessness in the face of authority stemmed from his belief that true justice and virtue were more important than social harmony or personal safety. Rejection of religious orthodoxy and emphasis of inner conscience. In his time, religion was deeply intertwined with Athenian identity, dictating social customs, politics, and moral values, similar to today's world. But Socrates did not reject the gods outright, but challenged conventional religious practices, arguing that true piety lay in ethical conduct and inner morality. He spoke of a daimonion, an inner voice that guided him and warned him against wrongdoing. To Socrates, this divine inner voice represented a higher form of guidance, one that transcended societal rituals and emphasized personal accountability. The daimon as a symbol of freedom. The daimon symbolized Socrates' commitment to living according to his own moral conscience rather than blindly following social norms or traditions. It was a constant reminder that true guidance comes from within, and that moral choices should be governed by reasoned reflection and ethical principles. This commitment to inner morality placed him at odds with many Athenians, who saw his questioning nature as a threat to traditional beliefs. Philosophy as a path to liberation. For Socrates, philosophy was not an abstract discipline but a practical way of life. He believed that the examined life was not the only life worth living. A life in which every belief, every action, and every value was subject to scrutiny. This relentless self-examination was the path to true freedom, as it freed individuals from ignorance, dogma, and uncritical conformity. By encouraging others to question their assumptions, Socrates sought to liberate them from the mental chains that bound them. Socrates' method of questioning revealed that much of what people believed was based on habit, convention, or unexamined assumptions. By leading his interlocutors to recognize their own ignorance, he empowered them to seek genuine knowledge and moral clarity. This process, though often uncomfortable, was essential for achieving inner freedom. The trial as the ultimate test of freedom. When put on trial for corrupting the youth and introducing new gods, Socrates was given a choice: renounce his philosophy or face death. And he chose death. In his defense, he argued that his mission was divinely ordained and that abandoning it would be a betrayal of his very soul. By choosing to die rather than compromise his beliefs, Socrates demonstrated the ultimate form of freedom: freedom from fear, from coercion, and from the demands of an unjust society. The legacy of Socratic freedom. Socrates' life and death exemplified the power of living according to reason and virtue. He showed that true freedom is not found in wealth, power, or social approval, but in the courage to think for oneself, to challenge what is unjust, and to seek the truth, even when it means standing alone. His legacy continues to inspire those who dare to question the norms that bind us and to seek a life guided by conscience, reason, and moral integrity. Socrates broke free from social norms and expectations by rejecting wealth, embracing simplicity, and living according to reason and virtue. He liberated himself through relentless self-examination, moral courage, and an unwavering commitment to truth. In doing so, he set an example of what it means to be truly free, free from the opinions of others, free from fear, and free from the illusions of society. Socrates, the politician and the paradox of wisdom. Socrates' friend Chaperon visited the oracle of Delphi, which declared that no one was wiser than Socrates. Intrigued and skeptical, Socrates set out to disprove this claim by questioning those reputed to be wise, including politicians, poets, and craftsmen. So, an interaction. Socrates approached a respected politician known for his wisdom. He asked the man to explain concepts like justice and governance, expecting to be enlightened. As the conversation progressed, Socrates gently yet persistently revealed contradictions in the politician's reasoning, exposing gaps in his knowledge. Socrates concluded with a wry reflection. "I am wiser than this man. Neither of us knows anything great and good, but he thinks he knows something when he does not, whereas I, as I do not know anything, do not think I do either. I seem, at any rate, to be a little wiser than he in this very small particular, that I do not think I know what I do not know." So, a witty takeaway is that Socrates' use of humility and irony highlighted the hubris of those who believed themselves wise, illustrating that true wisdom comes from recognizing one's ignorance. The encounter with the sophist Thrasymachus. In Plato's Republic, Socrates debates Thrasymachus, a sophist who argues that justice is nothing more than the advantage of the stronger. So, Thrasymachus, irritated by Socrates' method of questioning, bursts out, "Socrates, stop asking questions and actually provide some answers for a change." Socrates, unfazed and with his characteristic wit, responds, "How can I provide answers when I do not even know what justice is? Would you have me offer you nonsense? If I am truly ignorant, should I not question those who profess to know?" As the debate continues, Socrates leads Thrasymachus through a series of questions that ultimately undermine the sophist's claim, revealing that even Thrasymachus cannot provide a consistent definition of justice that holds up to scrutiny. And Socrates, with a playful jab, remarks, "Thrasymachus, you make a fine lion's roar, but perhaps we should put aside the roar for the sake of reason." So, in his interaction, Socrates masterfully disarms the aggressive rhetoric of Thrasymachus with a calm logic, humor, and relentless questioning, illustrating his skill in transforming heated debate into thoughtful inquiry. Socrates and the artisan. As part of his quest to understand the oracle's proclamation, Socrates spoke with skilled craftsmen who were highly regarded for their experience. In this example, Socrates praised the craftsman for his technical knowledge, but then asked questions beyond the man's area of expertise, such as moral and philosophical matters. The craftsman, confident in his wisdom, answered with an air of authority, prompting Socrates to note, You are skilled in your craft, and this deserves respect. But it seems you think this knowledge extends to all matters. It is not a greater mistake to believe we know what we do not understand? When the craftsman insisted that his practical wisdom make him fit to speak on all subjects, Socrates added drily, "The shoemaker is wise in shoes, the builder is buildings, but when the wise shoemaker attempts to rule the city, perhaps we should mind the feet." Socrates' wit revealed the limits of specialized knowledge, warning against the arrogance of assuming expertise in areas beyond one's particular expertise. Socrates and the wealthy young man. A wealthy young man boasted about the power and influence that came with his money. The young man asked Socrates, "Isn't it clear that wealth is the key to happiness?" Socrates, feigning ignorance, replied, "Tell me, does wealth give one courage, wisdom, or justice?" The young man, perplexed, stammered that wealth brought security and respect, to which Socrates countered, "If it gives respect, does that make a wealthy coward more courageous or a wealthy fool wise?" Socrates concluded with a smile, "Wealth is not an end, but a tool, and if used poorly, it builds prisons, not freedom." In this instance, Socrates used humor and simple logic to challenge the idea that wealth alone brings virtue or true happiness, emphasizing that character, not riches, defines a person. The dinner invitation. Socrates was invited to a lavish dinner by a wealthy host known for his extravagant tastes and desire to impress. Upon seeing the luxurious feast, Socrates remarked, "Such abundance! How many servants are required to prepare this meal?" The host, beaming with pride, listed his many servants and their specific roles. Socrates leaned in and, with a mischievous glint in his eye, asked, "So, who prepares your soul for such a banquet? For surely, if your body is fed so well, your soul must feast on virtue." When the host looked bewildered, Socrates calmly added, "Perhaps it is time to feed the guests within." Socrates' wit here highlights the imbalance between material indulgence and spiritual growth, gently reminding his host of the importance of nourishing the soul. The young admirer and beauty. A handsome young man, confident in his looks, approached Socrates to boast of his popularity and attractiveness. The young man asked, "Socrates, surely beauty is the greatest gift?" Socrates, smiling, really replied, "Indeed, beauty can captivate. But tell me, does beauty make one wise, or is it but a fleeting shadow?" The young man insisted that beauty was admired by all, to which Socrates asked, "Would you prefer to be admired for something you had no part in creating, or for the character you can shape through your own efforts?" When the young man hesitated, Socrates concluded, "The flower fades, but virtue grows stronger with care. What garden do you choose to tend?" Socrates' interaction playfully revealed the vanity of placing too much value on physical appearance, steering his admirer toward deeper self-reflection. Socrates and the rhetorician. Socrates engaged in a discussion with a sophist who prided himself on his rhetorical skills and ability to persuade others. The sophist: "Socrates, I can convince anyone of anything with my words. Would you not call that true power?" Socrates: "Indeed, you possess a remarkable skill. But tell me, if you convinced a sick man to eat, what would make him sicker? Have you healed him or harmed him?" The sophist, caught off guard, replied, "Harmed him, of course." Socrates: "Then it is better to have the power to speak truth, which heals, or the power to deceive, which harms. For it seems your power is a double-edged sword." Socrates deftly exposed the dangers of persuasive speech without regard for truth or ethics, highlighting the moral responsibility of rhetoric. The self-proclaimed wise man. Socrates encountered a man who claimed to have deep wisdom on all matters. The wise man, "There is no subject on which I am ignorant." Socrates, with mock deference, asked, "Ah, then tell me, what is the nature of the soul?" The wise man stumbled, offering vague and inconsistent answers, prompting Socrates to continue. "And yet you claim to know everything. Perhaps it is wise then to know that one does not know." And Socrates finished with a smile. "I envy you, for ignorance is bliss. You must live in a perpetual state of happiness." Socrates used irony and humor to expose the arrogance of false wisdom, demonstrating the value of intellectual humility. Socrates and his wife. Socrates' wife was known for her strong temper and frequent quarrels with him. When asked by a friend how he could endure such a difficult spouse, Socrates replied, "She is like a spirited horse. If I can train myself to endure her, I can face anything in life." On another occasion, Xantippe, his wife, is said to have poured a bucket of water over his head after a heated argument. Socrates reportedly quipped, "After hundreds comes the rain." These exchanges show Socrates' ability to handle conflict with humor and equanimity, viewing challenges as opportunities for growth and self-discipline. The beauty of philosophical inquiry. Socrates was conversing with a group of young men about the pursuit of philosophy. One of the young men asked, "Why waste your time asking questions, Socrates? Wouldn't it be better to simply live life?" And Socrates replied with a question, "Is it better to wander aimlessly, unaware of where one is going, or to examine the path and choose wisely?" When the young man persisted, Socrates added, "The unexamined life is not worth living." This iconic line emphasizes the importance of self-examination and rational inquiry as the foundation of a meaningful life. Socrates and the tyrant Critias. During the reign of the 30 tyrants, Critias, one of the leaders, tried to intimidate Socrates and suppress dissent. Critias ordered Socrates to stop questioning the government's actions, warning him of severe consequences. Socrates calmly replied, "When the wind blows, we do not command it to cease. We build windbreaks to stand firm. If the truth blows against you, do you command it to stop or do you stand firm?" Critias was furious but left him alone, unwilling to engage further. Socrates' courage and commitment to truth were undeterred even by threats from powerful figures, demonstrating his steadfast integrity and use of metaphorical wit. The market encounter with a pompous philosopher. A philosopher who believed himself superior in wisdom mocked Socrates for engaging with common people. Philosopher: "Socrates, why do you waste your time with those who cannot comprehend higher thoughts?" Socrates responded, "The smallest stone make up the grandest temples, and perhaps even in the smallest of minds there is a gem of wisdom worth uncovering." And he added with a twinkle in his eye, "Besides, those who think themselves high often need grounding." Socrates valued dialogue with everyone, not just the elite, emphasizing that wisdom can be found in all walks of life, and that arrogance blinds even the most learned. The shoe analogy with a young, ambitious politician. A young man eager to enter politics sought Socrates' advice. The young man asked Socrates how to become a great statesman. Socrates asked, "Do you know how to make shoes?" The young man, confused, replied, "No, of course not." And Socrates continued, "Yet you wish to lead a city, though you do not understand its needs. Would you trust a shoemaker who knows nothing of shoes? First, learn the craft of leadership, then perhaps you will lead wisely." Here, the Socrates' analogy highlighted the importance of genuine understanding and preparation before seeking positions of power, a lesson still relevant today. Socrates and the idea of death. As Socrates faced his death sentence, friends urged him to escape or plead for mercy. And Socrates said, "Why should I fear death? No one knows whether it is a great blessing or the worst of evils. It would be foolish to fear that which we do not know." When asked why he refused to escape, Socrates added with a wry smile, "Would I escape from the laws I have taught others to respect? That would be the greatest hypocrisy." And here Socrates faced death with the same fearless questioning and irony that defined his life, showing his unwavering commitment to principle and reason. And now, my friends, for the most important part, the part about how can you incorporate more of Socrates' wisdom into your life. So, first one, know thyself. This is the foundation of freedom. To break free from societal norms, begin with deep self-examination. Ask yourself, who am I beneath the roles, titles, and expectations placed upon me? What are my true values, fears, and my true desires? Without self-knowledge, you will be a slave to the opinions of others and the norms of society. When you truly understand yourself, external pressures lose their power. And how can you practically do this? Dedicate time each day for quiet reflection in your journal. So, essentially, journaling. Honestly evaluate your motivations and decisions. Ask yourself why you act or believe as you do. Identify areas where you may be conforming to societal expectations at the expense of your authentic self. And do that on paper. 2. Question everything. Cultivate a critical mindset. Do not accept norms, traditions, or widely held beliefs simply because they are popular or convenient. Challenge every assumption, no matter how deeply ingrained. Only by questioning can you separate truth from illusion and genuine values from shallow customs. The practical steps. Practice the Socratic Method in your own life. Engage in self-questioning or debate with others to uncover the foundation of your beliefs. Ask yourself, why? 5 times for any deeply held belief or habit, peeling back layers to uncover its roots. Seek out diverse perspectives and be willing to engage in difficult conversations without defensiveness. 3. Live by your own principles. Define and uphold your values. True freedom comes from living in accordance with reason and virtue, not from blindly following society's dictates. Identify your highest values, like courage, honesty, kindness, or justice, and let these guide your actions. When you act from a place of conviction, the judgments of others become irrelevant. Practical steps. Take time to reflect on what virtues or principles are most important to you and write them down. Regularly evaluate your actions against these principles, asking, am I living in alignment with my values? When faced with difficult choices, prioritize integrity over convenience, even if it means facing social disapproval. Embrace discomfort. Growth comes from challenging norms. Advice. Breaking free from societal norms often means standing apart and enduring discomfort. Do not fear this pain. It is a sign that you are growing. Just as I faced scorn and ridicule, You too must be willing to walk a path that others may not understand. And your practical steps are: deliberately put yourself in situations that challenge your comfort zone and test your ability to stick to your principles. Embrace constructive criticism and use it as an opportunity for growth, rather than taking it personally. When you encounter resistance or ridicule for breaking norms, reflect on whether it is a sign that you are remaining true to yourself. 5. Listen to your inner voice. Cultivate a personal moral compass. There is within each of us a daimon, a guiding voice of conscience that speaks when we stray from our path. Learn to hear and trust this voice. When society urges you to act against your principles, your inner guide can lead you back to what is right. Practical steps. Pay attention to moments of internal conflict. When you feel uneasy about a decision, pause and reflect on why. Practice mindfulness or meditation to quiet external noise and better hear your inner guidance. Trust your own moral judgments, even when they conflict with social norms, and learn from the consequences of acting on them. 6. Find like-minded individuals. Strength in shared inquiry. While freedom begins within, it can be strengthened through dialogue and mutual support. Seek out those who value reason and virtue and engage in honest, probing conversations. Together, you can challenge each other to live authentically and break free from the chains of conformity. Join or create groups dedicated to meaningful dialogue of self-improvement. Engage in philosophical discussion with those who challenge and support you, even when you disagree. Surround yourself with people who respect your commitment to truth and authenticity. 7. Detach from external validation. Do not tie your happiness to the approval of others, wealth, or status. These are fleeting and beyond your control. Focus instead on cultivating your character and living according to virtue. This is the only true form of freedom. So, reflect on how much your happiness depends on external factors and work to reduce this dependency. Practice gratitude for what you have and cultivate resilience in the face of loss or criticism. Develop a habit of acting virtuously without expecting praise or recognition. Find satisfaction in knowing you're doing what is right. 8. Be prepared to stand alone. Your courage in the face of isolation. To live authentically may mean standing alone, as Socrates often did. Yet there is great strength in being true to yourself, even when it means facing isolation. It is better to suffer for the sake of truth and virtue than to live comfortably in falsehood. Your practical steps. Develop inner resilience by reflecting on past experiences when you stood by your convictions. Find strength in the examples of others who have lived courageously and authentically, even when it cost them dearly. Remind yourself that breaking free from societal norms is a journey that may be lonely at times, but leads to a deeper sense of self-worth and freedom. So, what would Socrates do? He would urge us to examine ourselves deeply, question the world around us, and cultivate an inner strength that does not waver in the face of social pressure. By living according to our own principles and seeking truth above all, we can break free from the constraints of societal norms and achieve true freedom. A freedom that comes from living authentically, courageously, and with unwavering integrity. So, thank you very much for sticking with me. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, you can book an appointment with me. I'm a CBT practitioner and I can help you get ahead in your life, especially with inner health, convictions, and beliefs. And I believe that this is the true way to live a great life. So, until next time, I wish you all the best and have a great one.